Hello, my name is Keshwani. There's Keshwani, Keshwani. We are here because we want to prepare for GMAT. We have been solving GMAT math problems out of this book here, GMAT Review, the official guide, the 13th edition. If you do not own this book already, purchase one immediately. You're going to need it. The problem that we are about to solve is the one that you will find on page number 289. Please turn to page 289. Today is our lesson number 212. The problem that we are about to solve is 152. 152, the very first one in the second column. Let's take a look at it. They give us a picture here, which looks something like this. There's a triangle here and we're given 3 squares. And they give this region's name A, B, C and D, and we are told that this is P, Q and R. I'm not sure if we are told that or I put it in P, Q and R. Alright, let's get going then. We are told that the area of the triangular region D is 4. Area of region D is 4. The question is, what is the length? What is the length of a side of square A? A side of square A is this side right here from P to Q. Let's call it X. So we want to find out what X is. The question simply is, how much is X? That's the question. Let's see what they tell us. In the first statement, they tell us that the area of B, area of square B is 9. What can we do with it? Area of square B is 9, and because it's a square, length and width are the same, that tells us, that implies that Q to R must be 3. Q to R must be 3. We are also told that the area of the region D, well then we got a problem. If B is 9, then Q to R is 3. Oh, never mind then. For a brief second, I was a little confused because we just found out that Q to R is 3, and we also know that the area of region D is 4, and for some strange and inexplicable reason, I thought that the region D was also a square, which would not have been possible, because had region D been also squared, then the side of that region, side of that square would have been 2, and then this side cannot be both 2 and 3. It's a triangle. Anyway, so that's what it is. Q to R is 3. How can we find X from that? Oh, that's pretty straightforward then. Q to R is 3. Let's put it here. Is there any way we can figure out P to R? We know that the area of PQR, area of PQR, we are told is 4. We're going to make a use of this part. Area of triangle PQR, we are told is 4, which is 1/2 base, which is going to be P to R, times height, which we just found out is Q to R, which is 3. So there you go. We can figure out P to R from there. So 4 equals 1/2 PR times 3, multiply both sides and you get P to R is equal to 8/3. Now all of these things that we're doing here, as I always remind you when we're doing the data sufficiency questions, whenever we're doing the data sufficiency questions, as I always remind you, the things that we do on the blackboard, things that you and I do together, it's not something we will do in the real exam. You just have to be able to look at it and realize, can it be done, yes or no. You don't actually have to do it out. As soon as we know that the area of this thing is 9, immediately that tells us that we can figure out this side. And then they tell us the area of the region D. If we know the area of the region D, 1/2 base times height, we already know the height, we can figure out the base. 1/2 base times height, 1/2 base times height, 1/2 base, let's call it y, base times height, which we know is 3, and that is 4. Now we don't actually have to solve this. You don't actually have to solve this thing for y. You just have to be able to realize that it can be done. So we can figure out y, we know this part, once we know this guy and this guy, once we know p2r and we know q2r, obviously we can figure out the x by simple use of Pythagorean theorem. And therefore the first statement by itself is sufficient. First statement by itself is sufficient. AD, BCE. Because the first statement we just found out is sufficient, we know now that the answer cannot be B, C or E. The answer would have to be either A or D. Now what we are about to do is purely for learning purposes, not for the exam. Just for learning purposes, we are actually going to figure out what x is. So we now found out that P2R is 8 over 3. P2R is 8 over 3. So it's a simple application of Pythagorean theorem. Here is your hypotenuse. So x squared is going to be 3 squared plus 8 over 3 squared. And that's what it is. That's your x right there. Let's do second statement, shall we? In the second statement, as soon as we get to second statement, we have to erase everything that we extracted from the first statement. It no longer applies. We can leave that there x if you wanted to. Let's see what they tell us in the second statement. In the second statement, they tell us that the area of the square C, is equal to 64 over 9. 64 over 9. Notice something? I'll tell you in a second. Here is your square C. Area of this thing is 64 over 9. 64 over 9, that implies that the side from here to here, or for P to R, that implies that P to R must be square root of 64 over 9, which is 8 over 3, which is precisely what we had found before from the first statement. As I always remind you, these two statements never contradict each other. Whatever you found in one statement, you better find the exact same thing in the second statement. And if you don't, if you find different values for the same thing, something is going wrong. So the same exact logic will apply. Same exact logic will apply as before. So now we know this is 8 over 3. We know the area of the triangle. From that we can figure out Q to R. Area of the triangle D. Area of D, we are told is 4, which is 1/2. Let's erase the part from the previous statement so we don't mix it up. Again, same exact logic. 1/2 base, which is 8 over 3, times height, which is Q to R. And we can figure it out. Let's call it y. And or we can solve this for y. And once we know the y, we can figure out the x from the Pythagorean theorem. So here, this is 4, this is 8, that becomes 2, this 2 cancels out with this 2. So it seems to us that y is equal to 3, which is just as well because that's exactly what we found last time. Remember, we were told that the area of this guy was 9. So y equals 3. Once we know the y, we know this side, we can figure out the x. The second statement by itself is also sufficient. And since each statement by itself is sufficient, the answer is D. Answer is D. Let's do the next problem, shall we? Number 153. 153. In 153, they tell us that Sarah's age is twice Bill's age. Alright? And the question is, how old is Sarah? How old is Sarah? Now, before we do any work at all, we should realize immediately that here we are dealing with two unknowns. We are dealing with the two unknowns are we are dealing with Sarah's age, which is an unknown. We do not know what it is, and we are dealing with Bill's age. There are two unknowns, and therefore we need two independent equations. They have already given us one equation. Right here is one equation. This sentence is our first equation. Sarah's age, we are told, is twice Bill's age, 2 times Bill's age. That's our first equation. Somehow, some way, they must give us one more equation, one more independent equation in one of these two statements, or maybe they give it enough information to extract the second statement from each of these two statements. Otherwise, the job cannot be done. Let's see what they tell us. Otherwise, the answer would be E. In the first statement, they tell us 4 years ago. Oh, there you go. We are getting someplace. 4 years ago, Sarah's age was 3 times Bill's. Again, in the real exam, as I keep reminding you over and over again, it takes a split second to realize that this is enough. This is your second statement, and therefore A, D, B, C, E. Since we can extract the second equation from here, once we have the two equations, we can solve for each of these variables. It can be done. Therefore, the first statement by itself is sufficient without having done any work at all. We know that the first statement is sufficient, which is why it's called data sufficiency. We just have to establish that we have sufficient data. We don't actually have to do the work. Since the first statement by itself is sufficient, we know now that the answer, whatever it is, cannot be B, C, or E. It has to be either A or a D. Now, again, from this point on, what we're doing is purely for learning purposes. We're going to actually do it out. 4 years ago, Sarah's age. So what was Sarah's age 4 years ago? 4 years ago, Sarah today is S years old. So 4 years ago, she must have been 4 less than that. And we are told that that amount is, or was, or is means equals 3 times Bill's age. Now this is where you have to pay attention. 3 times Bill's age when? 3 times Bill's age then. Let's see how they actually phrase it. They must clarify in the wording that they're talking about not 3 times Bill's current age, but 3 times what Bill was 4 years ago, just like Sarah. Let's see how they phrase it. 153 was it? Because when I put them on a blackboard, I get lazy, I don't write everything. 4 years ago, Sarah's age was exactly Bill's age. Well, it's understood that they're talking about Bill's age 4 years ago. So what was Bill's age 4 years ago? Bill's age 4 years ago was B minus 4, just like Sarah's age. And we're told that Sarah's age at that time was 3 times this amount. There you go, that's our second statement. Second equation rather. And we're done. All we have to do is substitute this equation here, S equals 2B in here, and solve for B and solve for S. We're going to do it out. S equals 2B. Let's put it in here. So it's 2B minus 4 equals 3 times B minus 12. Subtract B from both sides and we get B equals 2. And bring 12 to this side, becomes, looks like B is equal to 8. And if B is 8, Sarah, who we are told is twice as old, must be 16. Now when we work on the second statement, assuming the second statement also provides us sufficient information, when we work on the second statement, we better find the same ages, 8 and 16, nothing else. If Bill's age, second statement gives us something other than 8, or if the second statement gives us Sarah's age of something other than 16, then something has gone wrong in our work. Either in the first statement or in the second statement, we have made a mistake. That's what it says. Somewhere, something is rotten. And when fish goes rotten, when a fish goes rotten, it just smells fishy. You cannot tell which bit of the fish has gone rotten. You have to throw away the whole fish and start all over again. Do you understand? Don't waste your time trying to find your mistake. Just scratch the whole thing and start all over again. As I said, when fish has gone rotten, you can't really tell which bit of the fish is rotten. You have to throw away the whole damn thing. Start from scratch. Sometimes it is more economical to do it that way. Let's do second statement, okay? Do not ask me why I always have to share this wisdom from the Far East from you. Even though I'm not from the Far East, but that's neither here nor there. Number 2, second statement. 8 years ago, I meant to say from the East, not Far East, it just came out that way. The wisdom from the East. 8 years from now, there you go, there's a second equation coming up, I can feel it. 8 years from now, now what's going to be Sarah's age 8 years from now? Well, she's S years old now. 8 years from now, she's going to be S plus 8. What's going to be Bill's age? Well, Bill is B years old today. So 8 years from now is going to be 8 more. So let's see what that tells us. 8 years from now, Sarah's age will be time and a half Bill's age. Alright. 8 years from now, Sarah, yes, it's going to be time and a half. Let's see how they actually phrase it. Because sometimes I paraphrase the whole thing. This was number 153. 8 years from now, Sarah will be exactly 1.5 times, which is so awkward to say. Alright. 1.5 times, which is 1.5 times, or rather time and a half, or 1.5 times is 3 over 2. So 8 years from now, Sarah's age is going to be this amount, and we are told that this is equal to time and a half of Bill's age. Very good, that's our second equation again. Therefore, second statement by itself is also sufficient. The answer is D. The answer is D. Each statement by itself does the job. Again, from this point on, we're going to actually do it out purely for learning purposes. So let's do it again. S equals 2b plus 8. Multiply both sides of the equation by 2, so we can get rid of this 2. Multiply this side by 2, multiply this side by 2, so we can cross out this 2. And here we end up with 3b, and 3 times 8 is 24. So here we get 4b plus 16 equals 3b plus 24. Bring the 3 b's to this side, so we get b equals to, bring the 16 to that side. 24 minus 16 is 8. Just like before, and therefore Sarah will be 16. Just like before. It should not give you any different answer. Do you understand? So the answer here was D. Alright? I will see you tomorrow. Bye now.